That Super Bowl honeymoon was brief because at 7 a.m. this morning, the league was dealing with this. Their own analyst, Warren Sapp, arrested here in Phoenix.
I opened up and I trusted, the people that were around me. That was really eye-opening to understand, my financial state at that time.
I wish I would have just shut up and just played football.
Inking a multi-million-dollar deal and then within years being left with only pennies and sometimes a huge amount of debt. Unfortunately, this happens to a lot of NFL players, and you would be shocked to find out some who were considered the top in the game quickly lost all of their money. So who are these guys that left their bank accounts in shambles? One is a Pro Football Hall of Famer and notorious for being one of the flashiest on the field. How about this retro quarterback, once the face of the football frenzy state of Ohio, who had multiple people, even his own flesh and blood, swindling him out of his hard-earned playing day salary? What about a Pro Football Hall of Famer, one of the best quarterbacks to ever play the game, a guy who obliviated NFL records, who lost nearly $14 million? Or another player, a 7-time Pro Bowler, a Super Bowl champion, and a one-time master of defense who you might find sacking his own groceries rather than at high-class NFL events due to his legal and financial ruin. Then there's an individual who spent $5,000 a week at the Cheesecake Factory, leading to him losing most of his career earnings. Who are these NFL players who went broke? Well, today we're going to find out. Before we get to the content, make sure you leave a like, subscribe, and turn on our notifications to make sure you never miss an NFL upload. And now that we got all that out of the way, break! Mic check 1 2 1 2. The Cleveland Browns have a long list of quarterbacks. However, back in 1985, the first-round pick in the 1985 supplemental draft, a hometown quarterback, became a longtime successful quarterback and one of the wealthiest NFL players of that era. In 1989, Bernie Kozar, with his cool mullet, signed a contract with the Cleveland Browns worth $15 million, making him one of the highest paid players of the 80s. The man was literally crowned the King of Cleveland, right around the same time the basketball player was born that ended up taking his nickname. The two-time Pro Bowler and Cleveland Browns legend, Kozar, was a little too trustworthy with his money. Bernie's own father did the most unimaginable thing. Kozar's father, Bernie Kozar Sr., who had a very Clevelandite career of selling air compressors, said he ran a venture capital firm with his son. The truth was, Kozar Sr. was siphoning money from his son and paying for home mortgages, furniture, and cars, all for himself. He also went behind his son's back and signed a side deal with the Cleveland Browns for $1 million. Now, here's the craziest part. At some point during his career, Bernie Kozar Jr. found out about how his father was draining his own bank account, and he still continued to allow his father to manage his finances. Kozar Jr. earned his dough while spending 9 years as a Cleveland Brown, becoming the face of the franchise until a young coach, you may have heard of him, by the name of Bill Belichick, gave the football to Vinny Testaverde. Kozar moved on and earned a Super Bowl ring as the Cowboys' backup during the Aikman era. However, as he continued to live out his dream on the football field, off the field he was going broke. Even though he was a part owner of a NHL franchise and an arena football league, he owed the Browns over $1 million, owed his ex-wife $3 million, and the bank almost $10 million thanks to bad real estate deals. In 2009, Kozar declared bankruptcy, saying he only had $44 in his account, including assets. He actually had a $9.2 million valuation, but what was shocking is that Kozar owed double that amount in debt, nearly $19 million. He even risked losing his NFL pension money due to the filing. In 2010, he lost the last property he owned in Ohio due to hundreds of thousands of dollars in unpaid taxes. Bernie Kozar's most recent net worth was valued around $100,000. What's another pair of Air Jordans to an NFL star? Well, to this Pro Football Hall of Famer, he at one time owned 240 pairs of Jordans that were worth over $6,000. He may have made over $75 million during his NFL career, but when he filed for bankruptcy in 2012, he had almost $7 million in debt, and all those Jordans were now long gone, along with many other prized possessions, including a multi-million-dollar home with his sports memorabilia inside. Warren Sapp, a member of the NFL's All-Decade team in the 1990s and 2000s, has had a roller coaster of a life so far. The bottom was in 2015, years after the bankruptcy, when he had to say goodbye to his job, in which he was making $45,000 a month as an NFL Network analyst. Warren Sapp was fired when he was arrested and slapped with assault charges while covering the Super Bowl in Arizona. During his peak, his NFL playing days, Warren Sapp was a beast as a defensive tackle and one of the greatest pass rushers of his generation. A 4-time first-team All-Pro, a 7-time Pro Bowler, and a NFL Defensive Player of the Year in 1999. However, his extravagant spending on flashy suits, diamonds, lion skin rugs, along with a plethora of legal troubles caused him to go broke less than 10 years after he finished playing. That 2012 bankruptcy filing for Sapp stripped him of his U of Miami championship rings and his Super Bowl ring, his home, his cars, and all of his unique belongings. In 2012, Sapp's bank account total was less than $1,000. His $4.1 million home was auctioned off for $2.9 million to help cover nearly $7 million in debt. One thing they haven't taken away from Warren Sapp, though, is his impressive stat line, as Sapp totaled 96.5 total sacks in his 13-year NFL career. Drama has surrounded this Pro Football Hall of Famer throughout his entire life. In 2012, he admitted to being broke and complained of having no friends. $44,600 a month in child support payments would cause a dent in anyone's wallet. However, Terrell Owens was once worth $80 million and was a superstar in the NFL. Then within a year, had homes all across the US go into foreclosure, all because he trusted the wrong people with his money. Terrell Owens said that there was a mismanagement of his funds and admitted that he didn't take the extra time to monitor where the money was going. One of his worst investments was an ill-fated Alabama entertainment complex, in which he lost $2 million. Bingo turns out to be illegal in Alabama, and since he invested in it while he was still a player, it violated the NFL gambling policy. Owens told GQ magazine of the loss, "I hate myself for letting this happen. I believe that they had my back when they said, 'You take care of the football and we'll do the rest.' And in the end, they just basically stole from me." Owens also said a friend who he helped out when his grandmother had passed drained one of his accounts of more than $270,000. Maybe that is why Terrell Owens said he doesn't have any friends anymore. It was no secret that Owens enjoyed the finer things in life, including chains and designer suits, but he never had multi-million-dollar cars, and his multiple homes added up to under $4 million. Once T.O. realized he is in trouble financially, Owens participated in just about anything in his post-playing days to prevent him from going bankrupt. Owens signed up for reality TV like Dancing with the Stars and had his own show. Remember the T.O. show? He also did some modeling work and wrote a tell-all book. Owens was very transparent in everything he did, even allowing cameras to film him standing in his mother's kitchen, admitting he was going broke, all while famous T.O. crocodile tears rolled down his cheek. Although he isn't on TV that much anymore, that modeling gig might stick. I bumped into T.O. recently at my gym, and the guy still is in phenomenal shape. The Terrell Owens of today wouldn't ever admit to being broke. He would say he was more in a financial bind. Terrell Owens' story is the classic one of trusting the wrong people. One thing we know for sure is Terrell Owens had some shady people handling his money. For example, his former financial advisor's firm was shut down in 2012. Currently, Terrell Owens is trying his hand at being a YouTuber. In the off chance you're watching this, T.O., I would love to collaborate with you. This quarterback probably should have wished his gold jacket was made of real gold, as he needed back in 2012 when he lost huge in an investment gone wrong. Dan Marino, the Miami Dolphins quarterback that had nearly every quarterback record at one time, made a very wrong choice in lumping all of his hard-earned dollars into a single company. This 9-time Pro Bowler made millions of dollars but lost most of it when he was investing in a company called Digital Domain that he purchased 1.6 million shares in. So what was Digital Domain? Do you remember at Coachella 2012 when a hologram of Tupac Shakur appeared on stage with Snoop Dogg and he started performing? Well, the company that made that hologram of Tupac was Digital Domain, and guess who was impressed by the hologram? None other than Dan Marino, who happened to be in attendance at Coachella at the time. The company was owned by James Cameron and made special visual effects for high-grossing movies such as Titanic and Transformers. And to be honest, if I was a person that was at Coachella at the time, I would think that's the future of entertainment because I was blown away by that Tupac hologram. However, after that company's quick and impressive rise on the stock market, it went bankrupt in 2012 and Marino's shares were worth nothing. That investment cost Dan Marino nearly $14 million, and although he may not have been entirely broke after the ordeal, it made him much less wealthy than before the venture. Now, this story has a happy ending because Dan Marino did make a strong comeback financially, which the true method may not be entirely known, but I'm guessing it has something to do with South Beach real estate, because as of last year, Dan Marino is worth $35 million. Another quarterback that was a first-round draft pick of the Tennessee Titans in 2006 and had a nice fat wallet, who started off hot as expected by being named to a Pro Bowl and earning the Rookie of the Year, but just after a few seasons of average play at the signal caller position, he was out of the NFL. However, this former Texas Longhorn had his share of issues over the years other than leading himself into financial ruin. In 2008, while with the Tennessee Titans, the team that had invested so much in him, Vince Young went missing and did not answer his phone after his poor performance during a home game, which led to him being booed. He was discovered a few hours later, but the disappearance was all over the news. When his contract was up in 2010, it was not renewed, and he went from starter to riding the pine with the Eagles the next season, which, by the way, we do have a video on the Dream Team featuring myself and Set the Edge. We'll leave a link to that in the end screen if you want to check it out. After his time with the Philadelphia Eagles, Young then tried to latch on first with the Buffalo Bills and then the Green Bay Packers, but he wasn't able to make either team. Then, within 8 years, he had lost most of his $25 million in career earnings. First, he was immersed in lawsuits from his ex-significant others that he had children with, and at the same time was being chased by financial institutions due to high-interest loans that he had taken out. In 2014, Vince Young formally declared bankruptcy after his financial books displayed $10 million in debt and just $1 over $500,000 in assets. Like a lot of other professional athletes, trusting the wrong person was a major factor in why Young's pockets were quickly emptied. Young stated that his financial advisor mishandled $5.5 million of his earnings. However, Young's financial advisor wasn't the only one to blame, as Vince Young also took a loan out for $1.9 million on his own that he defaulted on. So much interest was piled on that one loan that the bill quickly reached $2.5 million. His other vices were fancy things like cars, for example, where he once purchased a Ferrari in cash that cost $176,000. Then, for one of his birthdays, he spent over $300,000 celebrating. He had to take out a loan just to pay for the birthday bill. But probably the most unique way in which Young lost his money was his weekly habit when he was first in the league. Young spent $5,000 every 7 days at the Cheesecake Factory during his first few years as an NFL player. He must have had one heck of a sweet tooth, or maybe he can really put away the chicken Madeira. Vince Young's financial woes could have been solved if he had just learned how to cook and bake at home and invested that $5,000 a week in the S&P or any ETF. It's unfortunate to see players that were given such tremendous wealth early on end up catching a bad break and eventually losing all of their money. But there are cases of players that manage their finances perfectly. For example, Hall of Fame bound Rob Gronkowski, for instance, hasn't touched 1 cent of his signing bonus or NFL contract money. It is all saved away, and he lives only off of his endorsement money. Then there is quarterback Kirk Cousins, who signed a 2-year, $66 million contract extension in March of 2020. and has over $140 million in career earnings, but lived with his wife in his parents' basement as recent as 2018. To this day, Cousins still drives a dented GMC Savannah Passenger, a vehicle he purchased years ago from his grandma for only $5,000. There's another guy who could lead a Save Your Money panel, defensive lineman Ryan Kerrigan, who used to be teammates with Cousins and has earned over $73 million in his career, but probably still has most of it in the bank. Kerrigan is also extremely frugal, keeping his food expenses low by eating out at Chipotle instead of restaurants with white tablecloths. Even after Kerrigan signed a $57.5 million contract in 2015, he continued to share an apartment with a childhood friend to save on rent. These may be the extreme ends of NFL players, but when you see your favorite player step out of a Bentley wearing a diamond-encrusted chain, just hope that they have someone keeping close tabs on their dollar bills, or they might end up an NFL star who went broke.